Okay, so let's look at a term, right? Let's first build up a term and then we'll understand exactly why these terms are important. Because now we're dealing with the topic of algebraic expressions. So let's say that we have minus 2x squared plus 4. The number that is in front of the variable, this is the variable. Right? This is what we call the variable. The number that is in front, so this minus 2 is the coefficient. So this is the coefficient, right? Both the minus sign and the number 2. This minus on its own is what we call the sign. The 2 is what we call the exponent, right? The 4 is what we call the constant. It's constant because it does not change. This is variable because it changes. It's some unknown that can change, right? And so this here is a term on its own, and this here is a term on its own. So this is two different ways a term can present itself. It can be a combination of a coefficient, variable, and exponent, or it can just be a constant on its own. That's what a term, or that's what terms can be. Okay. Furthermore, we must note that terms are separated by a plus or minus sign. So terms are separated by a plus or a minus sign. And very, very important, they are joined or they are grouped by. So joined or grouped by multiplication, division, or brackets. So the multiplication sign, the division sign, or the brackets. So for example, if you look at this here, if you look at this minus 2x squared plus 4, this is what we would call two terms. There's two terms in this. Remember what we said this is? This is, everything here is an expression, because it's a collection of what? Terms. It's a collection of numbers, variables, and operation signs. So that's what an expression is. It's a collection of all of that. And then we said that the plus and minus sign separates terms. So in this case, this is one term and that is one term. Okay. However, if I look at something like this here, so that's this case here, how the plus and minus sign separates terms. How does multiplication, division, and brackets group terms? You will see this a lot, especially when we start discussing factorization. If you see something like this here, 2x minus 4 and 2x plus 4, this is what we call a binomial. A binomial meaning that there's two terms. There's one term here, there's one term here, because it groups. So in this bracket, there's two terms. In this bracket here, there's two terms. But if you look at this as a whole, there's two terms. This is one term and that is one term. That's why we call it a binomial. Okay, so that's basically what you need to remember for the structure of a term, right? That's what we basically need to remember, right? And something that's very, very important when we start dealing with expressions, and this is basically where we're going to start talking about the like and the unlike terms, right? Like and unlike terms. So this is what I want to say here, right? Like and unlike terms. In the like and unlike terms, you see previously we've already dealt with how we should add and subtract numbers only. Now, since we understand the structure of a term, how do we add and subtract terms that have numbers and variables? In order for us to do that, we have to deal with the topic of like and unlike terms. So let's elaborate on that. Right? Again, let me repeat that. We've already dealt with operations of integers. So operations with integers, where we have integers and we're adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing integers. What happens if we have numbers and variables? So what happens if we have 2x plus 2y? How do we add them? Or 2x minus 2y? Or 2x over 4x squared? How do we divide and multiply terms that have both numbers and variables? Right? So since we understand the structure of a term, let's go more in depth. Right? Let's go talk about like terms and unlike terms. And I want you to write these definitions down.